Hi, I'm Dr. Gail Randall, and I am certified in integrative and functional medicine and also board certified in gastroenterology and internal medicine and disciplined in many ancient healing technologies, if you want to call them that, methodologies, I guess. So I am definitely an integrative doctor. So today we're going to talk about leaky gut. What you may not know about leaky gut. A lot of people think they know about leaky gut, and maybe they do, and that's great. But I want to talk about it in detail, like how do we get it? What exactly is it? What does it do to you if you don't do something to intervene? And how do you cure it or prevent it? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I do have credits, first of all, to me, because a lot of this information comes from my chapter, from my to-be-published book, Soul Doctoring, Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet. And the book chapter is called Happy Gut, Happy Life. And then also want to credit my colleague and author, New York Times bestseller, Amron Meyer, from his book, Mind Gut Connection. And just let you know, he wrote the foreword to my book, so that's exciting also. So, okay, let's get started. Thanks everybody for joining. First I want to talk about microbes, because it's really all about microbes, and it's out of sight, out of mind. A lot of people certainly probably don't think about their microbes when they're eating. But until you get your practice down, your lifestyle down, you really should think about those microbes, because if we keep those microbes inside of us happy, then we're going to be happy. Thus, happy gut, happy life, right? So there are passengers inside of us, and that's those microbes we're talking about. A lot of people didn't acknowledge them for a really long time. 30 years ago, when I was at UCLA, as a gastroenterologist and assistant professor of medicine, I was doing stool testing. Everybody thought I was nuts. I was actually in the functional medicine clinic, in Amron Meyer's clinic, deep down back there, and I wanted to see what was in there. I thought that it probably had to do with disease. I thought it probably had to do with a lot of things. And so I was actually doing stool testing back there. I had the kits lined up against the wall, and everybody was going, "What are you doing, Randall?" But turned out I was right. It's now on Newsweek. It's everywhere. Amron Meyer's books. It's, our microbes inside of us are crucial to our health. So let's talk about how that's possible. First of all, understand there are probably 100,000 times more microbes in your gut than there are people on Earth, and 30,000 times more gut microbes than cells in your body, and there are 37.2 trillion cells in your body, so that's incredible, right? So that is a large part of us, and there's all kinds of communication going on between those cells and our gut and our brain and the rest of our bodies. That's why we got to take care of them, among other things. We have a symbiotic relationship with them, meaning we take care of them and they take care of us. So, very important. The normal gastrointestinal tract has hundreds of different species, and the less you have, the worse you are, so we really want to take care of those guys. They're disturbed by poor diet and lifestyle and stress, and can cause a lot of symptoms. If you've suffered, or somebody that suffered from diarrhea or constipation, gas, bloating, abdominal pain, all of this could be an imbalance. It probably is, and resulting from quote-unquote dysbiosis, meaning an imbalance of these bacteria in your gut. Without correction, it can lead to all kinds of diseases and conditions. This dysbiosis leads to leaky gut. the thing we're talking about now. So what exactly is leaky gut? And why is it so dangerous? Well, what happens is you get an imbalance in the bacteria, and these cells, it goes back to the thymus which lives in our neck, involutes and goes away by the time we're toddlers, and then by the time we're pre-teenagers, it's completely gone. But that's where the T cells come from, thymus T cells. So the T cells move out of your thymus, go into your gut primarily, some go in your bone marrow, and set up these colonies, which are basically chains of lymph nodes called Peyer's patches. And in those Peyer's patches, starts the communication to what's going on in your gut. There are also dendritic cells, nerves, and the Peyer's patches are on the, outside of the gut lumen, or in the wall of your gut. These dendrites are then above those, and they stick their tentacles down into the lumen of the gut, thus always keeping an eye, if you will, on what's going on in there and communicating it back up through the vagus nerve to your brain. So when you say you have a gut feeling, you do have a gut feeling. That's coming straight from your gut. So when that gut gets imbalanced, or there's inflammation going on, because in those Peyer's patches are cells that make cytokines. Cytokines are those inflammatory molecules that cause inflammation. So if your gut gets out of balance, the cytokines in the Peyer's patches come out. The lymph nodes, if you will, or the Peyer's patches, get irritated by the imbalance in your gut, and it causes inflammation. Like when you fall down and skin your knee, it swells up. So your gut lining swells from the cytokines coming from the Peyer's patches, and then what happens, your gut cells are supposed to be together like a picket fence, and they're held together by these things called by tight junctions. And that's the way it's supposed to be, because your gut wants to keep things in the gut lumen like it's outside of your body. It wants the intestinal mucosa to decide what gets to come in your system and what is held outside. So it holds it like this, but then when you fall down and skin your knee, the gut epithelium gets swollen, and so they drift apart. Thus, the food still goes through the brush border and passes through the cells and releases into your body in a regulated way. That's the way it's supposed to be. But if you get this swelling because of the dysbiosis or imbalance in your gut bacteria, the cells drifted apart, the food also goes straight through in between the cells. Now the problem with that is it goes straight through into your bloodstream without being regulated. Your body goes, oh my God, dangerous stranger in the house, and makes an antibody to that antigen, which is food or whatever else is in your gut. Could be toxins, could be glyphosate. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And so whatever goes into that gut will go straight through into your system, and your body starts making an immune reaction to it, which then cross-reacts with tissues in your body, very commonly joints. So arthritis can rise out of this. Also can cross-react with just about any tissue in your body, depending on what it thinks it looks like. So the inflammation will pass through into the rest of your body. The cytokines will pass into your blood. It can go into your brain even, and this is where a lot of cognitive decline starts. It can cause any kind of inflammatory disease, of course, which we know is cancer, heart disease, arthritis, and ultimately, if it continues, autoimmune disease, because it's just too much stimulus to your immune system, and it will trigger autoimmune disease such as systemic lupus erythematosus or rheumatoid arthritis, or locally Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease. So this leaky gut thing is nothing to dismiss or say, whatever. So we really need to understand what is causing it, so we cannot go down that pathway to chronic disease. 70% of our healthcare dollars here in the United States are spent on chronic disease. And it's really about diet. It's about eating an inflammatory diet with a lot of sugar, a lot of meat, a lot of animal fat, which ends up in leaky gut, which ends up in chronic diseases. So this is a whole interconnection between how it happens. But if we catch it at the root, which is in the gut, and we diversify our bacteria, which we're going to get into a little more, and we can cure it, we can prevent it. So that's a little overview of what exactly leaky gut looks like at the gut level. So these overgrowths not only result in bacterial overgrowth, but the bacteria are not friendly. They're opportunistic bacteria, things like Klebsiella, things like sometimes yeast, sometimes pneumococcal, sometimes strep, sometimes staph. But these are not healthy bugs. One of the worst in the autoimmune triggers is Provotella. And Provotella will trigger autoimmune disease as well as Klebsiella and some of the other capsulated bacteria. So the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that depression can result from a gut imbalance, because 70 to 80% of your neurotransmitters comes from your gut. Just like 70% of your immune system comes from your gut, 70% of your neurotransmitters comes from your gut. GABA, 90% of your serotonin, and a great deal of GABA, and it depends on the bacteria. And the bacteria are reduced or overgrown by these opportunist bacteria, which actually cause some secretion of things that make people feel depressed. People become depressed. And, I've been dealing with mental illness for a long time. It's sort of a trendy thing now, but, I've worked in mental illness and addiction for many, many years. And there's always mental illness behind that. And so in addition to looking at their mental illness, I would do testing on their neurotransmitters. You might want to check the podcast that is currently up on Sinesco and Hector Romero, which is an amazing way to assess neurotransmitters where they can be balanced naturally and don't depend on antidepressants, but they can be used in conjoint with antidepressants if necessary, but it actually cures the problem because it gets to the root problem. But I always want to look also at their guts, because anybody that's been in addiction has not taken care of their gut, has not, eaten the right diet to promote healthy gut, and also they've been under a great deal of stress, which kills off the good bacteria and allows the bad bacteria to grow. So when you've got mental illness, always, or even mental health problems, anxiety and depression, always think about the gut too. That's a part of it. So what we're doing now is back in the day when I was doing testing at UCLA, all we had was cultures, direct cultures and assessments. Now we have RNA and DNA tests which can define the whole microbiome. It's amazing. And you can get to the root problem of what's growing in there, and you can deal with it naturally. It's a huge boon, and it can be treated with diet and herbs, of course. And so healthy bacteria are central to healthy gut, but there's much more to it. Like I said, the immunity, and the gut is the largest neuroendocrine system in your body. So we're going to explain how that works too. So we talked about the T cells. We talked about the T cells in the Peyer's patches. And now we got to talk about more how do we get the bacteria back there? It's interesting because any probiotics that are taken as an adult do not stay with you. They don't become a permanent resident in your gut, but what they do is they will increase the diversity of your own microbiome and allow it to recover, to become more healthy. There are certain things we can give for the imbalanced gut, such as enteric-coated oregano or berberine or other gut balancing herbs to reduce the abnormal or dysbiotic bacteria, and in addition to the probiotics. But you also want to give prebiotics. So it's really eating a healthy diet. The enteric nervous system uses more than 30 neurotransmitters similar to the brain, and about 95% of the body's serotonin, like I said before, comes from the gut. There was a man named Michael Gershaw, who was the chairman of the Department of Anatomy at the New York Presbyterian Hospital, who published an article in 2010 that called the gut the second brain. And his feeling at the time, 2010 now, was that, end quote, religion, philosophy, and poetry are left to the brain and the head. However, since then, we've discovered that maybe that's not entirely true, because now that we know how the nervous system and the dendrites sitting on the outside of the gut are monitoring what's going on in the gut and send that information straight to the brain, it very well could be that some ideas you get are emanating from your gut, and maybe it's a song, maybe it's a poem, or maybe it's a danger signal. Oh my goodness, what's going on with my Aunt Bessie? So it's much more complex than we once thought, and the separation between mind and gut is not as distinct as what was one thought when Dr. Michael Gershaw was practicing. So these cytokines that enter the bloodstream by crossing the gut lining and getting into the brain can wreak terrible havoc in our bodies and brains. So just think about this. People that live in other countries that eat more their native diets, for instance, Africa, or even a Japanese Okinawan diet, or the Mediterranean diet, are healthier. They're not getting the diseases that we're getting. They're not getting the chronic diseases. They're not eating the sad American diet. They're not eating the standard American diet, which is full of sugar and high fructose corn syrup and refined carbohydrates, or meats which have been mixed all together in one hamburger. You'll find like 80 different cows or something. In the high animal fat diet, they're not eating that way. The meats that they do eat are usually from the sea. They call them meats. That's kind of interesting to me. And if they're not from the sea, they're natural. Like in Africa, they come from the forest or the desert. They're animals that have either been raised or caught or shot as game, and they don't have the chemicals in them. For instance, in Ghana or other countries, they don't even allow those chemicals in their country. All the food is organic. All the food is organic, and that is a major part of not getting leaky gut. We're going to talk about that some more, but glyphosates, or Monsanto, is a huge cause of leaky gut. Huge. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So I urge you, and have urged people for 30 years, to buy and eat organic, because those glyphosates they do so many bad things. They're potent neuroendocrine disruptors. They cause leaky gut, which of course leads to all of the havoc that we've been talking about. But they cause brain problems, and they cause heart disease. They cause so many things, and it's just everywhere. Even if like me, I eat 100% organic, but I did a test on myself, and I was surprised to find I do have glyphosates in my system, because it comes through the air. Even though I have a water purifier, it's just everywhere. So try to keep your body as clean as possible, and get the glyphosates out as much as possible. Eat lots of green leafy vegetables, do green drinks, detoxify as much as possible. So I did indicate that these dendrites, which sit on the outside of our gut, affect our feelings. They're our gut feelings, but they are our feelings. And, then the brain decides what to think about them. But these messages are coming, and they're coming in constantly. So it depends on what you put in your gut. For instance, if you do have an altered gut microbiome, it causes a multitude of symptoms. I mentioned diarrhea, constipation, bloating, gas, abdominal pain, brain fog, depression, anxiety, but it also can lead to these chronic diseases that I mentioned: diabetes, neurologic diseases like cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. It's very interesting to me that people that eat a completely vegetarian diet have a healthier microbiome. This has been measured, this has been proven, and have less incidence of things like Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's. So what's that saying to you? Okay. Other inflammatory diseases like inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's, autoimmune disease, other digestive disorders like reflux, gastrointestinal reflux, gastroesophageal reflux, and food sensitivities and food allergies. This is a huge cause of food allergies. To have these things leak across, your body responds to them, and here they come. First they start low grade like an IgG, then they become IgE, which means, dramatic reaction, hives, rashes. You may even get an anaphylactic reaction from certain things if you allow the leaky gut to persist. So we need to focus on keeping those microbiome in us healthy. So there's two other critical terms connected with gut health and the immune system, and most people know these, and that was actually three: probiotics, prebiotics, and antibiotics. So antibiotics does what? Saves lives many times, but if people aren't paying attention and taking probiotics, either during or after taking antibiotics, their microbiome gets askew, and the opportunists move in and they get the dysbiosis. So anytime you take an antibiotic, pay attention to think about your gut diversity and load up on probiotics and prebiotics. Prebiotics are usually fibrous things like inulin, but it can come from any fibrous food, and it gives the microbes a home to live on. So that's a way to increase your gut health. Also, eating a lot of fermented foods, although eating the fermented foods, like I said, does not contribute to microbes that become long-term residents. It does help the diversity of your gut during times of trouble and can normalize the pattern of metabolites produced by your gut. Fermented vegetables are things like sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, yogurt. Although I'm not a big yogurt fan because of the dairy issue, a lot of people are dairy intolerant, first of all, particularly in other parts of the country or world. But if you notice, where do the yogurts come from originally? They come from parts of the world where people don't tolerate milk. They don't have the enzyme for it. So when it's fermented, it's more easily digested with the lactic acid in there. So that's interesting. But milk in general, especially industrially raised milk, has too many white cells in it. And they allow something like 750 white cells per milliliter. And the cheese is just coagulated milk. So it's you know, that will cause an immune reaction. Just if you're going to eat white cells from another animal, it's not healthy. So I like the yogurts that are made from non-dairy now. That's what I prefer, but you pay your money and you take your chances, you know. But, you know, just understand that about milk. So you can treat your microbiome the best that you can. So, the gut houses about 3 pounds of bacteria. 3 pounds of bacteria and 500 species of microbiota. These have been shown to have a tremendous effect on the brain through the mechanism I said. These dendrites that sit outside the lumen put their little tentacles down in and then communicate through the vagus nerve straight back to the brain. That's why, partly why the vagus nerve is so important in stress and emotions. That reminds me of something. Do not eat when you're emotional. Do not do this emotional eating that a lot of people do, because you don't digest well, and it actually makes things much worse when you do that emotional eating. And stress itself will totally reduce the diversity of your microbiome, kills them off. And so stress is one of the main ways to get leaky gut. And we've certainly had a lot of that lately with COVID and everything else. So you want to do whatever you can do to reduce your stress. Whether it be exercise. Exercise has been shown to increase your gut diversity. Whether it be meditation. Whether it be breathing. If it's just simple breathing, I've told many times on this show for people to use 5 minutes twice a day to breathe in slowly through the nose. Breathe out slowly through the mouth. And when you breathe in, you allow your stomach to rise. And when you breathe out, it falls naturally. And if you do this effectively for 5 minutes, it decreases your stress neurotransmitters, so it decreases your norepinephrine, epinephrine, which is your flight or fight neurotransmitters. It increases your serotonin and your GABA, which are your calming neurotransmitters. Slows down your brain waves, slows down your heart rate, and lowers your blood pressure. And the trick is to count inside your head, like literally count in your head, because you can't think of all these other things you're worried about when you're counting. So do the breathing, and if you want a handout on it, DM me and I'll have it sent to you. Okay? So once again, the multitude of diseases and symptoms from leaky gut are just unbelievable, and I've listed them for you, but I can list them again if you like. Diabetes, neurologic diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and just cognitive decline in general. Other inflammatory diseases like heart disease, cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, inflammatory bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, arthritis, autoimmune disease, other digestive disorders like gastroesophageal reflux, SIBO, which we need to talk about, and depression, anxiety, food sensitivities, allergies, fatigue, and several forms of cancer. So it's not worth it. We need to be aware of our microbiota, and we need to feed them. You need to think of the microbes in your gut like your own personal farm. And what would you feed those animals and plants so that they would be optimally healthy? So that's what you should think of it like. So you want to eat food that's organic. Why? Not only just because you want to get away from the chemicals, because food that's organic is way more nutrient dense. It has, 100 times more nutrients than the food that's not organic. The food that's not organic looks beautiful. You see it at the store, wow, that looks great. But if you smell that tomato or smell that fruit, you can't really smell it, or you don't you don't get the same taste because it doesn't have the nutrients. So when it's in a soil that's organic, it's full of microbiomes. So again, the microbiota go from the soil and then also the microbiota in us. So it's like a whole network, okay? And they're not the same bugs, but they're both essential to create health. The soil, healthy soil, if you take a handful of soil, it has more microbiota than people that ever existed on the planet. And that's what assists that plant to bring in the nutrients, to fix the nitrogen to the roots, to keep the carbon dioxide fixed in the soil, and to keep the healthy plant going. That's how it does it. In the soil that's been added glyphosate, it has no bugs. It has no bugs, or very little. So that's why you're not getting the nutrient-dense food. So, for instance, with foods that have polyphenols, watch my Instagram TV on the Mediterranean diet, because it has a lot of information about that. But the polyphenols in food, like olive oil, olives, chocolate, pomegranates, things like that, the polyphenols in those foods are very, very high when grown organically. Then you put those polyphenols in us, and they break down into very beneficial molecules that helps prevent cognitive decline, helps prevent Alzheimer's, helps prevent Parkinson's, helps prevent this inflammation throughout your body. But if you don't have the right bacteria in your gut, you can't break down those polyphenols because they're very large molecules. And again, if they're not grown in microbe-rich soil, they're not going to have the nutrients. They're not going to have the polyphenols. And then when you put them in us, we have to have the bugs to be able to break them down. So this is an essential part. I believe it to be the key of the Mediterranean diet. I believe it to be the key of why it's so healthy. So check out that talk. It was a few times ago. Okay, so I want to talk about SIBO for a second. So there's a continuum. You have early leaky gut. You know, maybe you have a little gas, a little bloating. Then you have severe dysbiosis, where you have severe gas and bloating. And the microbiota, when you measure them, you've got a lot of opportunist bacteria, and you've got a lot of pneumococcus and Klebsiella and Provotella and things like that. You're on your road to getting massive inflammatory disease, and then it goes over to the other side where you might have SIBO. That's kind of like the end stage of gut problems, although it could come if you had a massive food poisoning or something like that. There's a stripping movement of the gut that starts up in the esophagus and goes all the way down. It is through your migrating motor complex, and it's felt to be that this sweeping contraction of your gut is sort of a clean out, sort of cleaning it out, sweeping all the bacteria into the colon. If you're constantly pounding food into your gut, it's not as effective. So a little bit of fasting is a good thing. As a matter of fact, fasting, probably a lot of you know what fasting does, but you may not know this. Fasting will reset your sensitivity to things like cholecystokinin and leptin. You know, so if you want to lose weight, you want to reset those things. So maybe a little bit of intermittent fasting. Don't eat, you know, use your nighttime hours, but don't eat for like 12 to 14 hours of the day. And it's much healthier. It allows this stripping motility from your migrating motor complex to happen, because otherwise bugs end up in your small bowel where they shouldn't be, and they accumulate and they start reproducing, and you start getting extremely bloated and more gas, and that leads to SIBO. And that you can do a breath test to find out if you have those methane or hydrogen producing bacteria. So that is one of the ways you get SIBO, is you don't have good motility, or you just eat all the time and you don't let your body do its sweeping, its clean out job. Okay, so if you do have SIBO, fasting is one of the ways you can reduce the excess of bacteria in your small bowel. So the other way is to maybe take some natural motility agents such as ginger or artichoke that can help gut emptying. But if you don't have fat in your intestine for 1 or more days, then your whole gut will reset its sensitivities to those things I said, cholecystokinin and leptin. So if you're on a weight loss deal, you want to do that. And even just to retain optimal health, you want to do that. So that's the little thing about SIBO I wanted to say, because I think it's so interesting. But I mentioned having a really bad food poisoning event, because sometimes the toxin that happens during a food poisoning event, your body will create an antibody to it, and that'll cross-react with your nerve cells in your gut. So, and then your migrating motor complex doesn't work well. So that's something to think about too for you practitioners. It's not a good situation, but there is something called a SMART test, which was brought out by the motility people at Cider. It's an antibody test to check for this antibody to your own nerve tissue in your gut. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the importance of prebiotics before I get into the hidden causes of leaky gut syndrome. So prebiotics are really fiber, and like I said before, they provide a home for your probiotics. And in addition, they prevent. We know that a fair amount of fiber and prebiotics help prevent colorectal cancer. They increase your absorption of calcium, which is a healthy thing. They also can increase your bone density, or in other words, prevent osteoporosis, and they increase satiety. So if you're working on your diet and you want to not eat so much, eat some fiber. Now, most people, or a lot of people in other countries, naturally have fiber in their diet. So, essential pre and probiotics are essential for optimal digestion, absorption, integration of nutrients, and elimination. So, what are some of the foods? What are some of the top foods for prebiotic? On my list is asparagus, sauerkraut or kimchi, which is not only giving fiber, but it's a good source of probiotics as well. Garlic, which is an excellent prebiotic and also discourages the growth of dysbiotic bacteria. Onions is a good prebiotic and also an antioxidant. Apple cider vinegar. Everybody wants to know about apple cider vinegar. How does it work? It actually stimulates digestive juices. So it helps your body break down foods. That's how it works. And it does help with reflux sometimes. If you're having retained food in your GI tract, apple cider vinegar does the trick. Ginger, and I mentioned ginger before because it can help with the motility, but it also relaxes the stomach and assists with digestion and nausea, and increases chi, or warmth. Dandelion greens are amazing. I love dandelion greens. They're really good for so many things. They are chelators of toxins. They are good sources of fiber. They are very healthy. In my detox, Randall's Rainbow Detox, I put a lot of dandelion greens into the detox broth or soup, because it helps not only your kidneys, but your liver, which is an important thing in a detox. Also cilantro, both of which are anti-inflammatory and detoxifying chelating agents. So no matter how dedicated we are to our gut health, we must deal every day with thinking about our gut environment and our little farm animals. What are we giving them? So do we want to give them a bunch of sugar or refined carbohydrates? No, because that's gonna poison them and make them not healthy. Do we want to eat a bunch of non-organic food? No, because it's going to poison them with glyphosates and things like that. And also drugs and alcohol. Think about that. Drugs and alcohol cause leaky gut because they poison not only the little bugs inside you, but they poison your intestinal cells and relax those tight junctions and allow those poisons to get inside you. So the other hidden causes of leaky gut are NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, aspirin. So those of you that take an aspirin a day, I know maybe your cardiologist told you to do it, but investigate if there might be another way, like taking fish oil or turmeric and fish oil, which is a pretty good blood thinner. I mentioned alcohol, I mentioned glyphosates, gluten, and some people can't decide whether it's gluten or gluten with glyphosate in it. So let's talk a little bit about gluten. It really comes from wheat primarily, and wheat in this country is the wheat has been hybridized is the problem, and the wheat molecule is 2/3 larger than what the natural seed is. So it's 2/3 larger, and first of all, your body's going, what is that? and then it has glyphosate in it, or if it doesn't have glyphosate, it did, and so your body's kind of expecting the poison, and there's this immune reaction thing that happens where when your body sees gluten, if it came with glyphosate before, it acts like it's there. There's an immunotherapy based on that. But anyway, so whether it's there, the glyphosate or not, Dr. Fasano from Italy in the 80s showed that the more gluten you eat, the more leaky gut you have. So there you have it, and that's not new, and that's not even in this country. He's Italian. Because in Italy, they have the original seed. And in some places in the world, they have semolina. And the semolina comes with its own anti-gliadin molecule, or its own anti-gluten, thing right in it. So if you're eating that wheat, it might be another story. So it might be better for you because it has the anti-gluten right in it. But what did we do? We took it out. We hybridized it out. We made the wheat portion of the wheat grain much larger, and often contains glyphosate, or your body thinks it does. So this is why it's so unhealthy. Other things that are sneaky that can cause leaky gut, antibiotics, most of us know, but any kind of toxin that you eat, these over-the-counter drugs, or if you're on any big pharma medications, you might want to check into that. And one thing that is really interesting is an anesthetic, a general anesthetic. Because if you get a general anesthetic, it poisons not only your brain, but the rest of your body too, relaxes those tight junctions, and here comes the leaky gut. So these are sneaky ways that you can get leaky gut. And with alcohol, it can be as little as one hard alcohol drink, and boom, you've got it. So someone that drinks all the time, it's going to be a big problem. So in summary, how do we balance our gut and care for our microbiome? Well, first of all, we need to manage our stress. We need to manage our stress because stress chemicals will for sure cause leaky gut, and we need to reduce the amount of meat we eat because we know that animal fat causes leaky gut. We need to choose a diet that's going to feed our little farm animals, so it needs to be a lot of fiber, things like yams, I've been talking to my friends in Africa, and they eat things like beans and brown rice and plantains and potatoes and cocoa yams and corn and cassava, ground nuts, and tiger nuts. Tiger nuts are amazing. They have so many nutrients in them. Tangerines, and Ghana has some of the best chocolate in the world, and they don't put sugar in it. They eat it the way it is, and chocolate is amazing. It's full of nutrients that can increase your neurotransmitters, but also, you know, it's a good source of magnesium in the body, and magnesium is one of the major deficiencies in our country, in this US of A. Also, they eat things like mushrooms and okra. Okra is very healing for the gut. It's a soothant. So if you get leaky gut, okra is a good thing to eat. Also, things with glutamine, or just take some glutamine, because glutamine is the food of the intestinal cells. So if you give your intestinal mucosa glutamine, it's going to help it to heal, because it's feeding it from the top, while you're trying to heal it by changing the environment through diet, through mindset, through exercise, and taking out the bad things, taking out the toxins, taking out the refined carbs, taking out the alcohol. They also, in Ghana, eat things like apples and bananas and blueberries and blackberries and onions, lemons, grapes, beets, cucumbers, carrots, ginger, mint leaves, and spinach. All of that sounds really good to, you know, in the gut for me, really good gut medicine. And then chocolate, like I said, has magnesium, has those polyphenols we're talking about, and also gives your body tyrosine, which helps you make more dopamine and clarity of thought and adrenal function. So, you know, take care of your gut. Be more aware of your gut feelings. Believe them. They're real, you know. And I believe that emotions begin in the gut and then sent to your brain, and then your brain decides what to think about it. So take care of the microbiota in your gut. Eat a proper diet, things that we've been talking about tonight, and you'll have a happy gut and a happy life. DM me with questions or ask me now. Hi guys. I know there's a lag time, but if you can't think of a question to ask, I'd be happy to answer anything. I hope that was helpful. I think it included most of the things that you need to do to have a happy gut and a happy life. Okay, I love you guys. Stay well. Take care of those microbes.